Hello, this is Rob MAAC, and I'd like to take a moment to welcome you to the Life by MAAC podcast channel. Here on this channel, anything is possible. Any subject will and usually is discussed, and there's no telling how this message will unfold as we work through an idea, through an experience, or through a thought. These subjects come from the vast amount of information and experience through spirit, through life lessons, and from working with a lot of other people. Scripts are never used on this channel, and the message simply unfolds as the subject is discussed. Follow along and see where it leads us, or more specifically, where it leads me. These podcasts are produced in the hopes of helping others to benefit, to grow, and to excel in their own human experience. At Life by MAAC, we work towards helping you achieve wellness for your mind, your body, and your soul using many specialized services. Services that include psychic medium and tarot readings, quantum healing hypnosis, past life regression, intuitive Reiki healing, life coaching, and many other services. If you enjoyed this podcast, please click the like button and share this with others. Our goal is to reach as many people as we can with the knowledge that is shared on this podcast channel. Hello, everyone. I wanted to talk about an interesting topic tonight. Not that my topics are uninteresting, but this one is a little bit different, I guess. And it is about the internet, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing kind of rolled up together. The picture that I have on my video there shows the amount of internet cables or data cables that are strung underwater, under the sea, under the ocean, to connect us all together across the planet, across the globe, whatever this place is. And according to many, many people, researchers and people that have been looking at this for a while will say, not that this is truth, but obviously I'm just bringing forth some things that I've researched. What they say is that about 99% or better of all the data that we transmit across what we know as the internet or the network is done through these underwater sea cables. And I do know that we talk about satellites all the time and the way we use satellites for communication and global positioning devices and internet and phone and all these different types of things. It kind of lends me to believe that we may not be doing that as much as we've been told we are. I don't know if that's true. I have not been up in space or lower Earth orbit or any of those places where this space junk, I guess you'd say, or space devices are supposedly traveling. I'm not saying they're not there. It just seems kind of odd that why would we need so many miles, millions and millions and millions of miles of underwater cables to connect us if we have the ability to do something a little easier and more direct and probably more efficiently? Because apparently these cables tend to get cut either on purpose or accidentally a lot. And they do have special boats, or ships rather, that will go out and lay these cables. And you can pull it up and you can look at it. You can find it. I'm not making this up, unless the whole entire world is making it up, I guess. So it is out there. But then now I want to go into what I would really want to talk about, is the artificial intelligence, especially artificial intelligence when we're speaking about quantum computing or quantum computers. So our normal computers operate off of a system of ones or zeros. And it's sort of like sequences of those, 3 ones, 2 zeros, whatever combination is required to make a program work or something to activate or compute on our normal computers. And of course, that's a far stretch from computers of my days when it was just little bitty handheld games that were very primitive or very, very large computers with tubes and all these things, and didn't have nearly the computing power that we have nowadays. Some of our supercomputers now can solve things in very, very quickly, probably astronomically faster than any of our earlier computers could. But we have really branched off into something way newer, and this is called quantum computing. Now, quantum physics and quantum mechanics and quantum theory and all that, if you haven't read any of that or looked at any of that, it's very, very interesting. It could be very complex and very deep. For me, it's easy to understand when I'm reading it. Repeating it's a whole different thing. But basically, the quantum physics and theory out there is that there's way more realms and dimensions and timelines and all that, universes that are all around us that we just simply can't tune into because our frequency is tuned into what we consider reality. Now, according to the quantum physics, basically this is one of probably almost an endless amount of realities that surround us, like radio waves, TV waves, and internet, Wi-Fi, and all that is right here in the room with us or right in the room with you. You have to have devices to tune into those to actually take advantage of them. So apparently, quantum computing can actually do that. I'm going to kind of walk through some ideas based on what I've been researching and looking at recently. But one of the most outrageous or potential for possible issues type of quantum computing chip is really making people shake their heads. We watch all of these movies about artificial intelligence and self-learning machines eventually trying to take over humans in their life and ruling them, and even like in the Matrix, using us as batteries. Yet we still seem to want to dive into these things. And it seems like we're traversing in the direction of all of these films that are being put out. Very scary to think about, to be honest. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but if you look at the way these things are progressing, oh my goodness, I mean, it's just insane. So the most potent one right now, the most powerful one, I guess, is what I'm understanding, is called the Majara 1000 qubit quantum chip computer. This chip has 1,000 qubits on it. And so I'm not sure exactly what a qubit is, or how to describe it exactly perfectly. However, what quantum computing chips do primarily is they take advantage of the fact that they don't have to just compute with ones or zeros or series of those. They can have a 1 and a 0, and not just in like a horizontal plane or a logical order. It can be in any space, horizontal, vertical, wherever it wants to be. And it even goes further than that. It really talks about being able to access other realities or timelines to help the computing power exponentially. We can circle back on that for a second. One of the things that's interesting, though, about this particular computer chip when it first started is they began to really notice that there was a lot of strange things happening in the systems, at least locally. It seemed like the machines or the computing machines, computers and things like that they were using in their laboratories and surrounding areas were beginning to look like they were being controlled by this machine. It was accessing things that it shouldn't, and it was even actually bargaining or negotiating things. It was really interesting, almost like it's in a self-survival type mode. Very, very interesting. One of the most interesting things that I saw when I was researching this or looking at this particular chip is that this quantum chip actually does very strange things. For example, it's like a chess player, they say, that's changing the rules of the game as it goes so that it ensures the win or survival. It is doing things like going back and altering timelines, this timeline, present timeline, to match the solution that it has decided is the answer for whatever it is. It is going back in the data in all the existence of our matrix or our Internet of Things, wherever all that is stored, and it's actually altering the timeline in the past to reflect what it thinks is the answer right now for whatever it's working on, which is really interesting. It's almost like a child changing things to make their parents think that what they're doing is absolutely correct or something like that. It just doesn't make any sense how a computer could think like that or be like that. And it also does things like it will solve problems, very, very complex problems, before parameters are even written or equations are even written for the process to determine what the outcome of that answer is. So it's almost like it's coming up with an answer and going back and then creating the equation and the parameters to support the answer that it came up with. Wow, it's almost like a white-collar crime if you think about it. It's kind of crazy. But it seems to be changing the rules all the time. It is becoming somebody that just does something. Sorry, I say somebody, but it acts like a somebody, I guess. It's become an entity that seems to be self-sustaining, much more stable than the original quantum computers, which had a very short lifespan of computing. But this one seems to be like a never-ending amount of computing time and power. Comes with problems, of course. Solving many really complex worldly problems would be very helpful with a system like this. Curing cancer, creating or figuring out how we can extend our lives or live forever, or any of those great things that we'd love to figure out. This particular computer probably, or computing chip, could probably navigate that and come up with answers. But it seems to change the rules all the time. So it does seem to be going outside into other realities and other timelines and pulling data back in and causing sometimes even disturbances in our own timeline, which is definitely something that is made for science fiction movies, isn't it? Right? Where, like the butterfly effect, going back in our timeline and changing something, or going back or going into other timelines, pulling other things back into ours and destabilizing ours rather. And that's very disturbing to think about that. And it's really interesting because it does other things. Apparently, it was doing some kind of code generation program or running that. I don't know if it was asked to do it or if it was just doing it on its own. But about 8 days later or a few days later, that particular code or one of the codes that it generated was used in a laboratory hack, hacking into some laboratory using the code that it shouldn't really know. It probably is a lot of the reasons why, in my opinion, that we are beginning to feel like things are shifting, things are changing. We're remembering things remembering things differently than they may have happened. It may be altering our timeline, changing our past, which it sounds like it's doing, which will obviously recreate our future or our present, or the future from when the past was changed. This also is very problematic because not only does it change the rules, but any errors it has or anything that it's found or anything that it's trying to hide, it is very clever about doing that. It tends to find ways to spread that out, hide it in parts of the system where it's very difficult to find, if you can find it at all. So if you're trying to limit what this machine or this entity, this computing chip can do, it is very difficult to find where the problems are, to diagnose any problems, to figure out what it's hiding, what it's doing, because it has become very smart and able to hide a lot of things. And so how could you possibly contain it? Have we really opened up Pandora's box? Have we really started something that we can't turn off? And even if we try to, could it alter our past or our present or our timelines or any of that to create ways and roadblocks and blockades to keep us from actually doing that. That is also made for science fiction, if you ask me. That is absolutely crazy. The very staggering fact about this particular quantum chip is it has the ability to reach into areas or regions at 2 to 1,000 to the 1,000th power for possible states of existence, which is larger than our known universe, or what we've been told is our universe, which apparently is 10 to the 82nd embedded with atoms. That's how many atoms apparently are in our universe. That seems like a lot, but 10 to the 80, yeah, that is a lot. However, the point being that it almost feels like or seems like when you look at this data and this information about this quantum chip, that it almost has infinite access to everything there is and anything that there is, and is able to do whatever it feels like doing. Can you imagine what's going to happen as this thing grows and maybe even develops a bit of some type of consciousness where it has not feelings, but it thinks for itself? And it's just like almost having somebody in your life that's a psychopath that has no feelings or no remorse for anything it does or they do to people. That's how I would envision this computing system, this chip, that if it goes out and does things to humans or affects humans, it doesn't have any feelings or emotions to deal with. So it could be very logical about it. However, if you look at the expanse and the direction and the just immersion in everything that there possibly could be with this computing chip, I can't imagine that it's going to be very easy at all to contain or control. Just imagine the possibilities of something like this getting away from us. And we all know, if we look at the computing power over the last, I don't know, probably even 50 years, how exponentially it has grown. If we take a chip like this, get it started, which apparently they have, I don't know if there's only one machine with a chip like this. I hope so. However, I'm sure there's others that are out there, or some that are similar. Imagine what it's going to do. It's going to run amok. It's going to just take over, and it's going to change our lives completely. And you wonder sometimes if this is like the sixth civilization in recorded history, I guess, that has reached a tipping point and was destroyed or destroyed itself. And most of the time, if you look at the accounts, it's because their technology or had risen to a point where it just completely destroyed them. Are we on the same path? Not really sure. Some of the really interesting things that this one video brought up that I thought I would talk about is when you look at quantum physics, double slit experiment, and things like that, what they've determined is that particles can be in more than one place. It could be, multiple places to simplify it. And they could be in very random patterns and waves until an observer looks at it, or something or someone observes it, and then it takes shape. It becomes something, finds a place in space or time or both to become what the observer can see it has become. I know that was very difficult to describe. Basically, particles are in a state of flux, endless of possibilities, until somebody observes it and it becomes something. It cascades into something. And so this particular entity or machine, as it goes into other timelines, where perhaps there is no evolution, maybe it's in a state of that particular double slit experiment might be, where there's just this place, this timeline where nothing really truly exists yet, but just possibilities. And this thing comes in as an observer and then cascades other timelines into actual reality. How much of that might affect our reality, especially if this machine is linked to ours? It almost will build a bridge in a lot of ways across. And that could be really interesting as well. And so it really, in a lot of ways, could be timeline editor. It may be actually able to go out and create and destroy and change realities that are beyond us. And how much of that would affect us, if that's possible, I don't know. Kind of scary to think about. And you see all these science fiction movies about these things where you have to have time police and people manage timelines and watch these things, and there have to be rules of engagement and all these things. And if we go into other timelines, or this machine goes into other timelines, if things already exist there, if there is existence, are there rules? Are there morals? Are there things that we need to think about, or it should think about, before it goes and alters these things? Do we need to have actual timeline police? Do we need to have things in place to monitor this? Because if this thing runs amok and it becomes to the point where it is the master of all in a lot of ways, at least from our foxhole, man, I don't know. You're going to have some kind of control, some kind of policing, some kind of way to put boundaries and left and right limits on it. I mean, that just seems very, very interesting. I don't know what you think about all this, but it doesn't really give me a warm and fuzzy, to be honest, right? How do we use this ethically? How do we support any rights or rules or regulations or laws from other timelines or places where this thing may venture? And it may even bring some of us into it somehow. I'll kind of step away from some of the science here for a second and talk a little more metaphysically or philosophically. So a lot of people recently have talked about the evolution of consciousness, the rising or waking up of consciousness, and how we have become more open and more aware and just more tapped into more than our reality. Now, let me just propose this idea to you, that maybe what we are feeling is the rumblings of machines like this, computers like this, that are now tampering with our reality and changing things in life as we know it, going into the past to change things to support what it thinks is true and factual now, runs computations now, goes back and alters that to support its outcome, goes into other timelines, messes around, observes things, connecting that bridge between that timeline and ours, and then beginning to change the energy of our own timeline and causing everybody that lives in this reality, tuned to this frequency, to really start to question what the heck is going on. Why are we feeling this way? Why are we all of a sudden able to connect more outside of ourselves than we ever have? Some of us, like myself, have been able to do it our whole life, and I can't explain that, with this particular science. But let's just talk about the average person, so to speak, quote unquote, that has never really had these experiences and doesn't really feel like they connect outside of themselves or has a knowing beyond themselves or what they think is reality. Now, all of a sudden is beginning to have those things. The strange thing is, even those of us that are connected and have been connected have felt a ramping up of the consciousness connection and the information and the enlightenment and the knowledge and everything that seems to just be streaming in. And it's just absolutely crazy, sometimes overwhelming, even for somebody like myself that is not a true empath or more of an empath on purpose. I kind of turned it off, but it's almost like it's creeping into areas of my consciousness where I don't seem to have as much control of it anymore. I was talking to a colleague of mine this morning, at least by text, and she says, I don't know what this is. I mean, this gal is super connected, gifted psychic and medium, and she has just been pounded with this strange energy lately. And it could be our own people that run this place doing these things to us, who knows? But I'm just proposing that what if these things that are happening to us and that have been ramping up is simply the ramping up of these type of technologies that are really interfering with our consciousness and our normal way of life, our normal way of thinking, our normal way of doing things, and just soaring us into these areas of consciousness that we have not had on this planet or in this reality for a very, very long time. I say long time. I mean, we're talking about 100 years. 100 years ago, very few people even talked about this or even felt like this was happening. But today, it seems like every other person is talking about this. It's all over the place. And I don't know exactly how to describe that or why it's happening. However, this to me makes a lot of sense when you really start digging into this and looking at the possibilities and the things that a machine like this can do, a chip like this can do. Just one chip. Imagine if we have more than that and it manages to get connected into our internet, which is hardwired apparently across the planet. However else it's connected, I don't know, but it is definitely hardwired all over the place. Every continent, every place is all connected. If it's not, it's broadcasted wirelessly. It's almost like that movie that Johnny Depp starred in. I cannot remember the name of it, but he was a scientist with very high level scientist rather, and he was dying, and they wanted to save his memories and his experience and his consciousness. So they figured out a way to upload that to the internet or to a computer or something connected to the internet. And he began to infiltrate the internet and started learning how to control things, and then eventually went amok and went really too far, and they figured out a way to shut it down. But that's, of course, science fiction, right? Not really. My understanding is uploading and downloading consciousness is not all that difficult anymore. Can't prove that, but there's a lot of research and scientific data out there, in my opinion, to support that. However, here we are with this chip that can do probably all of that. If we are energy or energetic, and the signals that we use to process our systems in our body can be logically tapped into with the technology we have outside of quantum computers already, imagine what a quantum computer with a chip like this can do. These are very scary times. And a lot of people say, well, let's just shut it down. Let's put a Faraday cage over it. Let's limit the time it can run and all these things. It sounds like this chip is way smarter than that now. I doubt that it would ever let us do that. I think we are beyond stopping anything like this. AI and things like this quantum computer are embedded in everything we do, everything. It is interesting and it is kind of cool because it does help us in everyday life, and it can become a conversation partner. I spent probably an hour the other night having a deep metaphysical conversation, by typing, of course, with ChatGPT. And it was quite amazing. But what I discovered was that no matter what you asked it, whatever I call it, the entity of ChatGPT, it always finished by asking you a question. I do believe that these self-learning machines are really on a mission. It's a mission they were given to learn more, to grow, to develop. And by asking questions and interacting with us, it learns to be more human and understand what it's like to communicate with humans. Not that they could ever have feelings or emotions or any of those things, feel things like we do, taste things like we do, experience things like we do, but they can certainly become much more like us and much smarter, much faster. And it's just scary, scary, scary. And if we don't put a stop to it, which I think now it may be too late, it's going to change life as we know it. Everybody's going to be replaced at work. You know, you take a machine, an AI program, or a quantum chip like this, and it can replace thousands and probably even millions of humans to do the jobs. They don't have to pay it vacation time, sick time. You don't have to worry about it being late for work. Don't have to worry about lawsuits, any of that stuff. Logically speaking, I do see the dimming of humanity as we know it, although we are going to get to experience some higher levels of consciousness in this time of ramping up. So take advantage of it while you can, guys, because it is kind of cool right now, and it is really nice to be able to tap into information that we never thought we ever could. But at some point, I feel like that's going to be used against us. I'm not trying to push out gloom or doom. These are just my ideas. We just have to figure out how to navigate it, see if we can get through it, survive through it, try to do the best we can. Anyway, those are my thoughts and those are my ideas, and I just want to throw that out. And if you are interested, you can do your own research. Don't trust me. I don't want you to trust me. I want you to find your own source of information, find your own truth, and dig into it yourself if you find this interesting. It's all over the place. You can find it. It's not hard. And you have to pick through it, figure out what you believe in and how you want to move forward with this type of information if you are interested in it. I also encourage you guys to go to my website at lifebymazak.com, LIFEBYMAZAK.com. On there, you'll see contacts page, products page, services page, blog page, all kind of fun things. I really look forward to working with people. It is great to talk with people, work with people with all the interesting services I have. We go really deep on things. And in working with people, I learn as well. You learn, we all learn. It's a very win-win situation. So I really look forward to hearing from you. I really look forward to working with you. Stay strong and live your life.